Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from IT Visualizer channel. We will continue our lab, the Red Alert Lab. This is the video number 28. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We have been still working with securing our Windows 10 based on the recommendations of the Department of Defense and the Defense Information System Agency of the United States. So we have been working now for 11 videos. This is the video number 12. We are talking about securing Windows 10. There is a lot of recommendations. Most of them are very important, and most of us doesn't concentrate enough on these points, so they are all useful. You should test them in a virtual environment before pushing them to your production environment, because these recommendations are for very secure environments, something like the military environment or something. But there is a lot of recommendations that we can take and put it in our normal environments or in our corporate environments. So let's continue from where we have stopped the last time. The last time we have stopped as caching of login credentials must be limited. For some reason the Windows cache your Active Directory or your domain account in its database, okay, or there is a small database called SAM. This is a database that the Windows saves the passwords for your Active Directory or your domain account or your local account. Will save it to this database. We will talk about it later. But why your accounts or passwords are cached or are saved? For some reason, for example, if the machine was disconnected from the network or the domain controller is unavailable, so you can still access your workstation using your Active Directory user account or your cached Active Directory user account, even though your domain or you are disconnected from the network, your cable connecting to you to your network is disconnected, or it's cut for any reason, or your domain controller is not available, okay? So this is one of the reasons why we need to cache your username and password. Even though the credential cache is well protected, the SAM account or the SAM database is already protected. But if a system is attacked, an unauthorized individual may isolate the password to a domain user account using a password cracking program and gain access to the domain. So here is saying that we need to not to disable this kind of options, but we need to decrease the number of logins to cache. So here is saying 10 logins to cache. So here we need or it will cache 10 users or 10 passwords. So I think we need to decrease this number a little bit, because we cannot disable this useful option anyway. So he's saying that it must be limited. It's not disabled, but to be limited. So we need to check and see if the registry contains this kind of option or cached login count. So let's see if this option is already working in our environment. But I think here he's saying that we need to limit this kind of option. He is saying that it should be 10 logins or less. So the default for Windows caching or for caching login credentials, it is 10. This is by default, and I think we will not change it, because he's saying this is the default, and he recommend you to leave the default as it is. Okay, so let's go and see if we have this kind of option activated in our network. So it is in Windows NT. I think it is down Windows NT maybe, or we are looking at the wrong path. So let's see where this option resides. You can navigate to the registry by clicking the box or the search box and typing or browsing the registry through it, the search box. Okay, so let's go and see here. I think it's not working, or it's not activated, this option. So we need to go and tell him interactive login, number of logins to cache is to 10 logins or less, logons or less. Okay, so I need to see if this option is already activated or not. So we will go. It's not activated. We have confirmed this from the registry, but we need to check, or we need to make it work using the group policy. So we will go to the Windows setting. I think we go to security setting, and then go to the local policies, and then security options, and then interactive login or interactive access, I think interactive login, yes. And then we need to number of previous logins to cache. Here we need to in case the domain controls, here we need to make it for 10 logins. Okay, so it was not activated, so we need to activate this option. This setting applies to domain join system, however it is configured by default on all systems. So he's saying that this should be configured to domain joined workstations. However, it is a recommendation to make it on all systems in different type of networks. For example, if you are working in a worker group so this also could apply. So anyway, this is one of the recommendations, to make it 10 or less. So this is one best practice. And then he is saying that the smart card removal option must be configured to force log off or lock workstation. So we all know smart card, it is a way to authenticate yourself to the domain, something like the password. So he's saying, and I think it have something to be inserted to I think the smart card, it is inserted in the PC in a way or another. Anyway, I didn't work with smart card in my environment, but he's saying if you have a smart card, when you remove it from the PC, I think that he's talking about, it should be configured when you remove the smart card to force a log off or lock the workstation. Okay, so he's saying unattended systems are susceptible to unauthorized use and must be locked. So you cannot leave your system opened if you are leaving the machine, or you are not going to do something and you leave the machine. It should be locked after 15 minutes. This is the time the screensaver will appear and the system will be locked. And if you remove the smart card, it should also make an automatic log off or lock to the machine. Configuring a system to lock when a smart card is removed will ensure the system is inaccessible when unattended, when you are not attending or you are not sitting in your workstation. So we need to see also if this option is working or not, or it is activated or not. So let's see. We go to the registry and see if this option is enabled or not. And then if it's not, we need to go to the group policy, interactive login, smart card removal behavior, to make it to lock workstation or force log off. Okay, he is saying if you don't have this policy, so the user should, or you don't have a lock policy, or you cannot lock the PCs automatically, you should inform the users to manually lock the workstations. And also you should configure your screensaver to work as a lock, or to have a screensaver applied, and after make it work, it should lock the PC. So here we can make it lock workstation. So this is, I think it's a best practice to make it lock, not to make it log off, actually, because the user may have some data he is still working on. The Windows SMB client must be configured to always perform SMB packet signing. So we all know that the SMB protocol, it is a protocol used to transfer files between the client and the server, and it works mostly in a file server situation. Okay, so here is saying that if you are a client and you are talking to your file server or SMB server, you should sign your packets, or the communication between you as a client and the server or the SMB server. So let's say we have two sides, the client and the server. Okay, the client and the file server, or the SMB client and the SMB server. So the SMB client, when talking to the file server, all of their communication should be encrypted and should be signed, so there is no man in the middle attack. What I mean by signing the packet is something like when you go to a match. Okay, so the security will not allow you to enter the match unless you have a ticket. So this is something like signing, or signing, we just verify or authenticate that you are the man, or you are a trusted user and I know you. Okay, or you are trusted to go and send data to the server. So we need to sign the packets. So the client should always be configured to sign packages. So this is an option should be configured from the client side. So we will configure that the client or the SMB client should always sign packets, and the server also should always sign packets, because there is two sides of this equation. So let's see how this could be. This will only communicate with an SMB server that performs SMB packet signing. So the server should allow SMB packet signing, and the client should allow SMB packet signing. So we have two sides of the equation. Okay, so now we should see if it is already enabled through the registry. If it's not enabled, this option, if it's not enabled, we need to enable it using the group policy. So now we can go and check and see if we have it. Here we can see that I can navigate from the search box from the registry. Here we can go to control set or current control set, system current control set. So we can go back one step, current control set, and then we can go to, I think, control, maybe no, LAN man work services, then LAN man workstation. Okay, here we can see how easily I can navigate from the search box. Okay, LAN workstation, then we go to parameters. Okay, go to parameters, yes, and see if we have this kind. So let's see, require security signage, the value is 1. Let's see if we have this value, require signage, it is 0. So that means that no, I think require, okay, I have enabled but it's not required. So here we need to its value is 0, not 1, so we need to enable this option from the group policy. We can go to Microsoft Network Client, here digitally sign communication, this is to be enabled. Make sure he's saying that this may affect compatibility with clients and services and applications, so take care to test this setting before applying it to your domain. Okay, so we have already enabled this kind of option from the group policy. Here I am just checking to see if I have my default domain policy. This is the default domain policy I'm working with. I need to check to see if I have already enabled this option in my default domain default domain control or default domain policy. Okay, so let's see if we go to security and go to Microsoft Client. Here we can see that client digitally sign always is disabled. Why it is disabled? Because sometimes the client cannot digitally sign or cannot encrypt the data, so we should not force the signage. Okay, so we will not force it. Always means he will force it, or he will not communicate with the SMB server unless the packets are signed. So what about if the client cannot sign the packets or the server doesn't support this option? So we will disable this option. Practically not all of the SMB clients and servers can sign the packets, but I strongly recommend that your server and your client to sign the packages anyway. So we will disable it, and we will configure another option to enable SMB signage if it is available. Okay, or if the client and the server supports this signage or this way of securing, I mean by signing of data. Okay, so let's continue. Here we see it is disabled. So I think the other option, if, here we can see if server agrees. So here you can see that this is option we have enabled if the server agrees. Okay, so if the server agrees, then the signage will go. So for example, if you are a client communicating with the server and you tell him, for example, that I don't sign packages, if he agree or if the server agrees, then the communication will continue. If he doesn't agree or disagree, he will stop the communication. I think this is related to the two sides. If the server should allow communication without data signage or packet signage, and if the client supports the data signage. So the server has the choice. If the client supports data signage or the package signing, he will allow the communication. So what about if he doesn't support this method? I think he will allow anyway. So this is the second group policy we need to apply if server agrees. Okay, so here we can see that this is different, or this is the recommendation, is to always sign packages between the SMB client and the SMB server. So this is one of the things we need to take care. Anyway, so let's see the other one. Here we can see that one other recommendation is to unencrypted password must not be sent to third-party SMB servers. So we all know Microsoft SMB server, which is called file server. What about non-SMB servers or non-Microsoft servers or non-Microsoft SMB servers? What are the non-Microsoft SMB servers? Let's have a look, because I don't know actually what are the non-SMB, non-Microsoft SMB servers. So let's see what we mean by this. Server matches it. Let's see what are non-Microsoft SMB servers. So I think here is talking about servers that maybe work on Linux, maybe working or on other operating systems than Windows, and I think there is some devices that act as an SMB server. Anyway, he's saying that, let's see if we can go what are SMB servers. Let's see here. SMB servers communication. Anyway, he's saying the explanation of this, but we can see here, for example, that there is I think he's talking also about the storage. You know, there is the NAS storage or the network access storage devices. They act as SMB servers in this case. Anyway, so he's saying that we need to take care that if you have third-party SMB servers, especially non-Microsoft SMB servers, you should take care that passwords sent to the non-SMB servers or non-Microsoft SMB servers are encrypted always. So it should not be sent unencrypted or in plain text. Okay, sending plain text across the network when authenticating to an SMB server reduces the overall security of the environment. So for a client to connect to a server, or a SMB client to connect to a non-Microsoft SMB server, it should authenticate the user first, or make sure that this user have the right to access the SMB server. So this authentication happens by the user sending his username and password to the server or SMB server to verify he is already or have access to the server, and this password should be sent encrypted. Okay, so you need to take care to always encrypt passwords sent by the SMB clients to the non-Microsoft SMB servers for authentication. So we need to take care also from this option. Okay, because sending passwords unencrypted, it is vulnerable to attacks, okay, or man-in-the-middle attack. Anyway, so let's see. Enable plain text. Here we can see that it is 0, so that means that we have already this option enabled in our network. Not enable plain text. 0 means it is disabled. 1 means it is enabled. Okay, it is zeros and ones if you are working with the binary system. Anyway, so here we can see that we will disable. Okay, disable this option. So that's it. Now we continue. The SMB server must always be configured to perform SMB packet signing. So as I said before, the communication between a client, or if you need to access something on, or to access a folder or access data on a server, we have two sides, the client side and the server side, where the file or folder is sitting or resides. Okay, so the SMB client and the SMB server both should enable or should support SMB packet signing. Okay, he is saying that the client maybe he cannot support packet signing, but the server should always support packet signing. Okay, the server should always support packet signing. So if you have a client that doesn't support packet signing, he can allow him, okay, allow him to communicate. But if there is another client that supports signing, he will allow him. Okay, so he will allow both the client that supports signing and the client that is not support signing. But we need always to make sure that the SMB server always allow packet signing. Okay, we have seen the option that if the server agrees, the one we have said before or we have seen before. So here we will allow packet signing. We need to go and see also if it is already enabled or not. Digitally, here we can see network hierarchy server saying that we need to allow this SMB server to always allow packet signing. Okay, here we can see that we will always allow packet signing from the server side. So we have group policies concerning the client and some group policies concerning the server. So this is one of the things. Okay, we need, I think I need to check my default domain policy again to see if I have this option enabled or not. By the way, we are working on a group policy to harden, or we have made a group policy to harden the Windows 10 workstations. This is the default domain policy. It applies to both workstations and servers. So let's see if I have already configured this option in my default domain policy. We go to the server. Here we can see that not the client, the server. So if we can go down, here we can see that network digitally signing is disabled. Okay, so we have here, I think here I have in this thing we don't we don't have the option of packet signing. Okay, in this default domain policy, so it is not a best practice to disable packet signing. So you always need to enable packet signing from the client side and the server side. Anonymous SID name translation must not be allowed. Allowing anonymous SID translation can provide sensitive information for accessing a system. Only authorized user must be able to perform such translations. What is SID? Okay, every user and every computer in the domain, okay, the computer have a name and the user have the name, but to make the domain controller differentiate, or to have a more accurate way to differentiate or to verify users and computers, they have a unique number, something called SID. So let's say, what is SID? Okay, so let's see here. SID, what is Windows SID? Because this is something different. What is Windows SID? So it is called a security identifier. It is a it is a number uniquely identifying a security principal or security group. Okay, so this is a number to verify a user or a group or a computer. Okay, so what we mean by SID translation or translation. What is SID translation? The translation translates a Windows into an account name. So he's saying that you maybe as a hacker, okay, so for example, we have said before that every user and computer and group in the Active Directory have an SID. Okay, so who is the one that can translate this number to a name? So for example, we all know the DNS, there is something similar in the DNS. The DNS it is a service that translates the IP of the machine or the unique number of the machine to a name. Okay, so this is what the DNS does. So what we are doing here is something similar. Who is the one responsible to translate this unique SID for a user or a group or a computer to its real name? Okay, this should be only be delegated or only be done by the administrators, the domain admins, or the local administrator of the machine. Okay, so here this is what we call by translation of the SID. Translation of SID, it is means it to get the name, to get the number, okay, and change it to a name. Retrieves the name of the account associating with the SID. Okay, so this is what we mean by translation. Here it is saying that anonymous here means not known SIDs. So when you can see in the Active Directory anonymous SID, so you can see, for example, I have showed you before in some videos that sometimes we don't see a name. So for example, you not see the username or the group name or the computer name. Sometimes you see a number, okay, or an SID. Okay, this happens in some rare situations where this user or group or computer was deleted, okay, and after deleting it, it was not deleted completely, so the SID of the deleted user or group or computer remains on the system, so it is displayed in a number, okay, or displayed in SID. So the hacker can translate this SID, okay, and he can work with it. Actually, guys, it is not when, as I said before, when you see an SID, this means this is for a user or a group or a computer. It was not deleted actually, but it was removed from a file. So for example, let's have a situation. For example, if you go to a folder that you have shared on the file server and you check the permissions and you see that in the permissions you can see not the names of the users or the groups that have permissions on the folder, but you see numbers or you see SIDs, that means that this user was deleted. Okay, this user was deleted, so his remaining SID appears. Okay, so this is the situation when you can see anonymous SID. Anonymous SID means that the user or the group or the computer was deleted and you still have, or you're still leaving it to have permissions on folders or on objects in your environment. So the hacker can get this SID and translate it to a name, and then he can use it to access the system. So here translating anonymous S or SID names should be always done by the domain admins or the local administrator. Okay, so network allow anonymous SID name translation should be disabled. I think this should be disabled, but it is available for the admin or the network admin. So here we need to see. So here we should apply this group policy. We can make it from here, or you can check the local group policy. Anyway, the local group policy, it will be applied, or we will make an Active Directory group policy to change the local group policy on any machine. Anyway, this is the local group policy. If we go and see the Windows setting and then security setting and then local or security options, let's see here if this option is enabled. Allow anonymous SID name translation to disable. Okay, so we can go there. We can go again to security options. Okay, it is disabled, so it's already disabled by default because this is in the default domain policy, so it is applied to every local group policy in the domain, or every local group policy on every machine. Okay, so it's already disabled. So let's continue working with the other recommendations. Then anonymous enumeration of SAM accounts must not be allowed. What you mean by anonymous enumeration of SAM accounts? Okay, anonymous log on users to list all names, though providing a list of potential. Anonymous enumeration of SAM accounts allows anonymous log on users to list all account names, providing a list of potential attacks. So what he's saying here, when you try to access a machine, okay, or to log into a machine, sometimes you can see a list of users there. Okay, so for example, if I am the last one to log in to the machine and my name is Kareem, if I shut down the machine and then open it back, you will see listed Kareem, so you can see my username listed, and you need only to type the password. So this is called enumeration, to list all or the last or the recent users that have accessed the machine. This is very dangerous, because the user or any hacker could, or any user can lock my account by typing the password several times. So he is saying that anonymous enumeration of SAM accounts. Okay, SAM, I think here let's get a little bit closer, or what is SAM? Okay, what is SAM? Let's go and say what is SAM. SAM, this is SAM account. What is SAM account? SAM account manager is a database file in Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7, 8.1 and 10 that stores users and passwords. So here he's saying that any user saved to this database, okay, it should not be enumerated. We have said before, enumerating, it is making a list. What is this? Is very brief explanation about enumerating. So you should not enumerate users. Okay, so if I need to log into a machine, I should not the Windows should not offer me, or should not list for me the recent users that has logged into the machine. It should be blank. So when you open the machine, you should be asked to provide username and password, not to provide password only, and the users are already listed and you can choose from them. So this is the thing. Here is saying that you should not allow anonymous users or unknown users to see the list of your accounts in your SAM accounts. And by the way, all of your Active Directory, I said before, or the Active Directory accounts, the local accounts are saved to the SAM database. Okay, so he's talking about SAM accounts. SAM accounts include Active Directory cached account and the local users account. Anyway, so here we will restrict anonymous SAM. Here we need not to enumerate the SAM accounts. Do not allow anonymous enumeration of SAM accounts. So here, this is also one of the things we need to check. We see if it is in the database, so it is in the registry. So here, I think, let me guys show you thing here. Let's go to the local group policy. So we can go here, run, okay, and type gp edit. Let's see this group policy and what does it talk about. So we can go here and open, maximize it, and then we can open here, and then Windows setting, okay, and then we go to security, and then we go to local policies, then security options, and then let's see this group policy. It is saying enumeration of SAM account. I think it's relating to the network. So let's go there. Okay, yes, SID, yes, here it is. Network do not allow enumeration of SAM accounts. This is it. This is the policy that we are talking about, to enable and explain. To perform certain activities such as enumerating the names of the domain accounts and network shares. It is convenient when an administrator wants to grant access to a user in a trusted domain that does not maintain a reciprocal trust. The security allows additional, so it does not allow additional permission be granted for anonymous connections to the computer to perform certain actions such as enumerating the names of the domain accounts and network shares. So he's saying that it should be disabled. Okay, so I think he doesn't give any explanation about this. Anyway, so I think this what I have understood it from this. So here we don't need to enumerate accounts, okay, so or enumerate some accounts, so do not allow anonymous enumeration of some accounts. Let's see here if we have it already enabled in the registry. So restrict some anonymous some accounts. It is anonymous SAM, yes, it is 1, so that means that we do not allow enumeration of SAM accounts. Okay, so this option is already working. Let's see how we can get it from the group policy. From the group policy we can get it from down. Okay, it's not there, so we can go down further. Here we say that do not allow anonymous enumeration of SAM accounts. This is for the SAM accounts, or this is for the Active Directory or local users, and also this is done for the shares. So a user should not see a list of the shares that the recent users have access. So this is also should be closed. Anonymous enumeration of shares must be restricted, so we don't need to see a list of users, okay, displayed for any user try to access the machine, and also a list of shares. For example, let's see here, if I think he's talking about this, if we tell him run, okay, and then if you go there, here we see the list of recent shares that I have accessed. Okay, so this is enumerated. We don't need this to be enumerated, or he can get it from, I think, the Windows Explorer of the machine. So we don't need this kind of shares to be enumerated, so we should disable enumeration of the users and enumeration of the shares, or the listing of the recent shares accessed by the users. So this is also a best practice, so we will enable this group policy as well. So do not allow enumeration of shares, okay, and shares and let's see, shares and accounts. Okay, so this is also something to take into consideration. So this is enabled. So here let's see also the explanation. I need to see the explanation again of this group policy, just to make sure that we are working fine with it. So we go there and open the Windows setting, and then we open security, okay, and then we can go to local, then security options, then we need to go to down here, let's see the network access. Here we can see enumeration of shares. Do not allow anonymous enumeration of shared. I think it is disabled. Do not allow anonymous enumeration of SAMAC explanation. Allow users to perform certain activities such as enumerating the names of the account. This is convenient. Okay, anyway, so a board is not saying anything here. It is disabled. Okay, so this is dangerous. Okay, I think it is. This is my local machine, so this is disabled by default. This should be enabled, not disabled. Anyway, so we need to enable this option. Okay, and we can see the explanation, I think, from it. So anyway, this is also one of the things to take into consideration. Okay, so it is already, I think it's not enabled. Restrict anonymous. System must be configured to prevent anonymous users from having the same rights as everyone group. Here we have said this group policy before, that anonymous user is an unknown user, not from your domain, not from your work group. He is an anonymous one. Okay, he's out of your domain, out of your work group. Okay, so he's saying that this kind of user should not have the right of everyone group. Everyone group, it is a group by default in the local machine or in the domain. Okay, sorry, it's something in the local machine. Local machine, sorry, it is a group, built-in group in every Windows system, Windows Server or Windows 10 or Windows workstations. Everyone, it is referring to everyone. Okay, so everyone means that all of the users are in this group, or you grant rights to everyone. If you put a user in this group and take this group and put it on a share folder, that means that you give everyone. Everyone means everyone. So if you need to put, or I think all of the users by default are put in everyone group, I think. So everyone group should not be given the same rights to as anonymous users. So everyone group, this is are all of your users in the work group or in your domain. So typically, okay, you can give them whatever you like because they are in your domain and in your work group, but they should not be given the same rights to the anonymous users. Anonymous users are users out of your work group or out of your network, so they should not be given the rights or the permissions for everyone. So for example, you can give everyone group access to some folders on your network, or you can give them access to certain services or certain applications, as long as they are within the same network or within the same domain or with the same work group. But for anonymous users, they should not be given any rights. Okay, so he's saying that access by anonymous user must be restricted. If the setting is enabled, the anonymous users have the same rights and permissions as the built-in everyone group. Anonymous users must not have these permissions or rights. When this situation could happen, for example, if you have a domain and you have an external domain and you need to make trust between both, okay, so or you don't want to make trust between these two domains, you need the external domain or the users in the external domain to access folders on your domain. Okay, so anonymous user here applies. You can give them rights to certain folders based on the anonymous group or the anonymous users situation. Okay, anyway, so you need to disable this kind of option, not to give anonymous users rights as everyone group, okay, or everyone user. Okay, so here we can continue working. So here we can see if it is already enabled in the registry. Anyway, anonymous user applies to anyone outside your work group or outside your domain. Okay, anyway, everyone include anonymous users. He's saying it is 0 here, so we have this already applied. Let everyone permission apply to anonymous users. Sorry guys, let's see if we can have more explanation about this group policy. It is network access. So let's go to the Windows setting and go to security and then local and then security options and then network access. Okay, it's already disabled, but let's see the explanation. When an administrator wants to grant access to users in a trusted domain that does not maintain a reciprocal trust. Okay, he's saying that, as I said before, between two domains and they don't have a trust. Users in a trusted domain want, or users in another domain want to access your trusted domain. Okay, I think he's talking about this situation. Anyway, so we need to disable it. Let's see here, we are talking about, yes, okay, so let's disable this group policy. So we'll disable it. We'll make it disabled. So let everyone, it is disabled, not enabled. Anyway, so we'll continue working. Now, anonymous access to name pipelines and shares must be restricted. Here is saying that also users outside your domain or outside your worker group should not have access to shares in your domain or pipelines. What is named pipelines? This is, I think it is related mostly to the SQL database or to databases. So you should not have anonymous access, or anonymous users should not have anonymous access to SQL databases or shares. This is very logic. So let's see what is named pipeline. What is named pipeline in Windows? So let's see what is named pipeline. A way or duplex pipe for communication between the pipe server and one or more pipe clients. What is I think it is the pipeline. The pipeline is related to an extension to traditional pipe concept on Linux and Unix. I have seen this before, but in SQL. So it is an extension to the traditional pipeline. One of the methods, although substantial, name a list as long as, I think, anyway, I know pipelines, it is related to a SQL database or accessing databases. Okay, so we should not give access or anonymous access or unknown access to named pipelines or shares. This is very logic. So also we need to disable this. So only authorized users should access the shares and the named pipelines. So he is saying that this restriction to those defined, so named pipelines can be accessed anonymously and shares can be, so there is two group policies we should configure before configuring this one. One is named pipelines can be accessed anonymously, we need to disable it, and another group policy, shares can be accessed anonymously. So we need to disable both, and then we can disable this as well. Okay, he's saying that this setting restricts access to those defined in network access pipelines and network shares. So here we will define who can access anonymously the named pipelines and the shares, and of course we will define no one to access these. Okay, we will see how we can define who can access anonymously. Anonymously we will disable completely, we will not leave anyone to access the SQL or the shares anonymously. He should be an authorized user to access them. So we will do not put any group in these two, or will not define any group to access name pipelines or shares in these two group policies. Okay, so let's see how we can configure this one also. So we need to check and see if it is already enabled. So let's go to the registry to see if this group policy is enabled or not. It is LAN man server, so I think we can go further. Okay, go I think to services maybe, or control, then LAN man. Okay, not LAN man, it is services, not control, it's services, then LAN man server. Okay, services, then okay, then click LAN man server. Yes, let's see if we have it already enabled. Restrict null sys or access session, it is not there. I think in parameters maybe. So let's see, it is in parameters. No, restrict null. So we this null sessions restrict null access, it is 1, so we have it enabled. So we have it enabled already. So network restrict anonymous access to named pipelines and shares. Okay, so this is also done, we have it already. So yes, this is it. We need to this is the one that we need to define pipelines accessed anonymously and shares accessed anonymously. So here we need to go and tell him restrict, okay, to enable it. Then remote calls, the other one, or the upcoming recommendation, remote calls security account manager must be restricted to administrators. So for example, we have said before that the SAM, it is a database that stores the usernames and passwords for the users accessing a machine locally or through the domain. Okay, so he's saying that if you are, for example, an administrator, that you are connecting to a remote machine, okay, you can access this database remotely, only you as an administrator, or you as as a domain admin, but anyone should be denied access to this database remotely or not remotely actually. So we need to restrict accessing to the security account manager database only to administrators. Okay, so this is one of the things, and especially remote calls. Remote calls, it means that it is accessed remotely. This should be restricted to administrators only, local administrators or domain administrators. Okay, so he's saying that stores passwords, restricting remote RPC connections to the SAM to administrator helps protect those credentials, because actually when you connect to this database, he will store your administrator password as well. So that this also is one good security point, because he will save your password as well. So you need to restrict access to this SAM account, so anyone, or SAM database, so anyone will not know your credentials or your password and username. He's saying that it's not available in Windows 10 version 15.07. Anyway, it's already expired a long time ago, this version. So we need to see if restrict clients to remotely connect to the SAM database. Let's see if it's already this option is enabled. So we can go and see this option. So this is very easy to navigate to the registry by using the search box. Okay, so this is very easy, not to click or to browse or to let's say to slide and see everyone. So here we can see that restrict, where is restrict anonymous access, restrict anonymous SAM, I think. Anyway, I think it's not there, so we need to go to the group policy and do it. Okay, it's not in the registry, so it's not activated. We need to tell him to restrict clients allowed to make remote calls to SAM. Okay, it's only to administrators. Okay, so I need to do this. So let's go and tell him that the only ones that can access the SAM database is the local administrators. Okay, this is it. You need to tell him define the policy and then edit security. Okay, and here we can see this is administrators, the local administrators of the machine. Okay, selected by default. And by the way, your domain admin account, it is added to the local administrators group, so he will also have access to the SAM database. Anyway, so we will do this and it will be populated. Okay, with this number. I think this group has a number, okay, or a security identifier, or SID, I think, but it's not a number here. It is something like letters. Anyway, so here we can see that it's already given to the administrators. So this is one. Then NTLM must be prevented from falling back to null session. Here we know LTLM, it is a kind or a protocol for authenticating a user to the domain, or authenticating a user, authenticating a user to the domain. It is now not used anymore because there is some security flaws in it. The one that's used in most domains is the Kerberos protocol. Okay, so he's saying that if you are still using NTLM, there is some versions of NTLM, not all of them are not secured. I think NTLM version 2 it's still used. He's saying that NTLM sessions, or the authentication sessions, are allowed to fall back to null. Unauthenticated sessions may gain unauthorized access. So he's saying that if, for example, the server does not allow NTLM, okay, or for example, let's see here, saying sessions are allowed to fall back, unauthenticated may gain access. So he's saying that, for example, if the server does not support NTLM, okay, so he will I think not LTLM, here is saying that if the NTLM sessions are not supported from the server, he will authenticate you anyway, or unauthenticated sessions may gain access. So he's saying that maybe you have set up your domain controller, if he does not support the NTLM protocol, he can get you authenticated, or he can allow unauthenticated sessions. So he is saying no, you do not. If the NTLM is not supported, you should close the connection, not to allow the user to be unauthenticated and to access the domain. So he's watching from falling back to null session. Let's see this group policy and see its explanation. I think let's go to allow local system null session fallback. Let's see what this group policy talks about. So this is network security. Let's again see the explanation of this group policy, so we can go there and see the Windows setting, and then security, and then local, and then security options, then network security. Here we can see that restrict, where is at going to null, saying incoming authentication. Okay, here we can see that. Let's see here, allow local, yes, here it is, this is the one. Let's see the explanation. To allow fallback to null session when used with local system, the default is true up to Windows Vista and false in Windows 7. So enable to allow to fall back to null session when used with local system. So here is saying that you can authenticate the user. So if, for example, if you are not authenticated, I think, to the domain using NTLM, you can access it locally, or access the machine locally. Anyway, he's saying that it is already true in Windows 7, so it's already enabled in Windows Vista, and it is false in Windows 7, and of course it will be disabled in Windows 10. Anyway, so this is also one of the group policies I don't heavily understand, but anyway, you can test all of the setting and you can search Google for it. But anyway, so we need to check the to see if the registry, if it is already enabled or not. I think it's not enabled. So we can see here, allow local system null session fallback. So here is saying that, I think I began to understand, it's saying that local system, so means if you are trying to access the machine from the domain, okay, or to access the machine using a domain account, and he fails to authenticate to the domain controller because of some authentication issue concerning the protocols. For example, if he is using Kerberos and you are using NTLM, so you are giving the option to fall back or to access the machine locally using the NTLM protocol. I think this is what I have understood it from it. So anyway, let's see if this what he's talking about. He's talking allow local system null session. Okay, so local system means local system. Okay, anyway, so we will make it disable. We will not allow the connection to the machine unless it is authenticated using the Kerberos protocol. Okay, I think here we can disable this option. We need to tell him to disable. So let's continue working. PKU2U authentication using online identities must be prevented. It is peer-to-peer authentication protocol. This setting prevents online identities from authenticating to domain joined systems. Authentication will be centrally managed with Windows user accounts. Okay, he's saying peer-to-peer. I think he's talking about some softwares that are used or to share things between PCs using something called peer-to-peer protocol. This setting prevents online identities from authenticating to domain joined systems. So for example, if you have an online identity, I think something like Microsoft account, online Microsoft account, or Google account, maybe he's saying that online identities, he is referring to the internet online IDs or internet users and password, online users and password. This should be prevented from authenticating to domain joined systems. So you should not allow this kind of users to authenticate or to be part of your domain joined systems. Authentication will be centrally managed by Windows user accounts. This is very, I think, one of the things. If you have your Windows Store, some applications on these Windows stores are accessed using your online identity. Okay, so this is one, not your domain account. So he will authenticate you, or he will let you access your Windows Store applications using your online identity. Okay, so this is one, not your domain account. Okay, so he's saying that we should not allow this kind of thing. For example, if you, for example, also we know that you can access your Windows using your Microsoft account. This should not be allowed. You can access the Windows using your local account, not the Windows Microsoft or Hotmail account. I think what it's saying about online identities, from authenticating to join a domain. So for example, you cannot use your Microsoft Hotmail account to access the domain. Okay, so this is the things he's talking about. You need to have a local account or a domain account. So let's see also to disable this kind of option. Need to see the registry. So I think you need to see something here, guys, about the time. Let us make sure that, oh, it's 1 hour. Okay, so I think we will stop at this minute or less anyway. So we'll go and allow authentication or PK2U. Okay, so this is something we need to disable it. Okay, explanation. Online this for authenticating the domain joined machine. Anyway, so Kerberos encryption must be configured to prevent the use of DS and RC4 encryption suites. So as we said before, Kerberos is the main protocol that authenticates a user to the domain. So you will not be able to access the domain unless you are authenticated by the Kerberos protocol. Okay, and the Kerberos it's not only authenticate you as a user to access the domain, but it also encrypts the communication between you as a client and the domain. Okay, or at least the data sent between, or the authentication data sent between the client and the domain controller, it is encrypted by the Kerberos. Okay, so the Kerberos encryption, or the authentication process and sending the data to the domain controller to verify that you are a user in the domain, the data sent, the username and the password should be encrypted, and you will not, or the group policy will be set to prevent all kind of encryptions to be used, DES and RC4 encryption suites. So we need to strengthen our Kerberos protocol to not encrypt the data or the authentication data or the username and the password, not to be encrypted using all kinds of encryption keys. So let's see how we can do this. I think I will stop at this one, but let's see how we can configure this. Let's go to the registry and see. But anyway, so we will stop at this recommendation to user account control approval mode for the built-in administrator must be enabled. So we will stop at this. It's minute 23:53. So hope this video was informative for you all, and thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.